Okay, hello, everybody. Oh, I can hear myself. There we are. That should be a bit better. Okay. I hear two versions of myself. Just bear with me 1 minute, please. I am just trying to sort what that echo is in the background. All right. That's the only way that you can hear me. Ah, I think I've worked it out. There we are. All back, all running. What I'm just going to do is grab my slides and then we should be ready to go. So it should be here. Let's share our screen and we're going to share over there. I'm sorry guys, I'm running it actually from 2 tablets today. So I am just making sure that everything is working absolutely wonderfully for anyone who has joined us. Perfect. It looks like I've got a couple of you on live, and I know that I've got a couple of people who've told me that they'll be watching this on replay. So hi everybody who is watching me live, and hello to anybody who is watching me on replay. Brilliant. So everybody can hear me, we're all good, and we're all ready to begin. So for those of you that are live, and of course those of you that are watching the replay, do just tap into the comments. If you in the chat can tell me what university course you, if you're a student, or your child, if you're helping them out, what one are they looking for? And that's just so that I can go back and we can have a look. And we always like to make sure on the Oxbridge University journey that we are making sure that that everything we put out there is really useful for our members. So if you just drop down in the chat what university course that they are interested. If you're watching me on replay, give me a hashtag replay so that I know that you are there. And do feel free as we go through the presentation just to write any comments that you've got. I might not answer them in the presentation. I might leave them till the end, or I might actually get back to you on comment a little bit later. So hopefully this is for anybody who is in year 11 or year 12, or your child is in year 11, year 12, and you're thinking, summer's coming up. What can I do to improve my application chances for university, or really just to make sure that my child is confident and prepared for the next stage? So if you are here and you're thinking, oh, what do I do? My child's coming up to summer and haven't got anything sorted out. What's going to happen? This is for you. So without any further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get started. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I am a full-time tutor. I am a secondary science teacher, but I also consult for some of the top university admissions companies out there. And I'll be mentioning actually one of them a little bit later on because they run a summer school. One of the things I'm going to be talking about is the pros and cons of summer schools. I also used to work with the Oxford Access team, helping students from non-traditional backgrounds, such as my own, to apply to Oxford University. So as a bit of background, I went to grammar school, but both my parents left school at 14 and 16. Both of them are blue-collar workers. My dad's a builder. My mum is a cleaner. So I come from a non-university background. And so for me, that preparation process, even though I was at grammar school, was a little bit trickier because I didn't really know what I was doing. And that's partly why I enjoy doing these videos for you guys, is hopefully I'm helping some of you out who also haven't been down this path. I run something called the Education Hotel, which is a tuition agency, and something called Top School and University. And Top School and Uni runs as an advice and assessments as well. So if you are interested, do go check those sites out. So that's Education Hotel and Top School and Uni. But as I said, mostly my kind of knowledge comes from actually working with other university admissions companies before I set these up. So a little bit about what are we doing if we're in year 11. So I put here that aiming high means starting early. And that is true to some degree. But before I want to get anywhere near university applications, I really want to start with this. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year for everyone. And your child has not been in school, been in bubbles have popped. Then they've had, if they're in year 11, they've had GCSEs cancelled, and then suddenly they are doing assessments. So it's been a really turbulent year. It's really important to make sure that they get some downtime this summer. And as restrictions start to ease, that also means seeing friends. That also means maybe building some local travel into your summer, building some sports matches in, making sure that they are physically healthy, so that they're making sure that they're eating well, that they're sleeping well, and that they're getting the right kind of nutrition as well. And I say this as a tutor, but I also say it as a mentor. It's going to help them going forwards more than probably anything else I say today. And the reason for that is just that unless you are of a healthy mind, a healthy body, in my opinion, you aren't going to be able to make the most competitive application, because your mind's going to be elsewhere. So really labour that point, but do make sure they get some time to relax. It's been really stressful. And I think sometimes as our students go into year 11, you've got big friendship changes, you've got people leaving school, you've got people coming into school for year 12. They might be moving. It's a lot. And then you throw lockdown in there as well. It's been a tough year. If they are looking, and this goes back to my aiming high means starting early, if they are looking at the top kind of universities, so we're talking Russell groups, we're talking Oxbridge, we're talking even for some students, they might be looking internationally, so looking at Ivy Leagues, extra reading is the best place to start. And the reason for that is that it helps your young person to work out more about what they're interested in. So they're at year 11. They've taken 10, 11 maybe subjects, and they need to work out which ones of those are worth sticking with. And they might have already chosen their A levels, they already know what they want to do, but they haven't necessarily chosen their university course. So make sure that they are doing some extra reading, and that extra reading can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be physically sitting down with a book. It could be reading New Scientist if you're a scientist and looking into those magazines, or looking at The Spectator, or it could be watching TED Talks. It doesn't have to be sit down reading a very long book. It's just about something to get interest flowing. So if you can suggest, maybe purchase a couple of those magazines, leave them around the house, see what happens. I know that many of my students, they're interested, but they can't find the right material. So I have a student who is very bright, and she's looking to apply to probably Oxbridge, maybe Ivy League, Russell Group universities. She's really interested in politics, but politics is a really dry subject when you pick up textbooks. Right? It's not very interesting to read, especially not as a 16-year-old girl who's quite outspoken in what she says. She's learning about the world. She wants to form her opinions. She doesn't want to be reading a politics textbook, especially not one that was written 20 years ago. So what we are doing is working through some kind of interesting politics and philosophy, And we're also looking at a lot of TV philosophy and TV politics. And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be really academic and really dry. It just has to be for interest. You're not at this point going, I'm going to put that book down on my personal statement. They're in year 11. No point worrying about that. But what is worth doing is keeping an eye on it. So when they read something, try and get them to note it down somewhere. Whether that be a diary, whether that be reflective, or whether that just be a list. Doesn't matter. Just make sure that they keep an eye on it. Because that means that when you come to write that personal statement, and I'll go on to that, why it might be worth thinking about it in year 11 and why we might think about it throughout year 12. But when we start thinking about that, they might say, oh, I remember this article that I read, but I can't remember where I read it. Go back to that list. So everything that I am talking about doing, extra reading, whatever it is, make sure that it's listed. Get a head start. If you're in year 11 and you are really wanting to go for Russell Group, really wanting to go for Oxbridge, take a time off, definitely. But also maybe do some intro reading for A-levels IB. Because one of my subjects, the subject that I kind of qualified in is chemistry. And I take a lot of chemists who are doing AS and A-level, and they find the jump really hard. And often that can be alleviated by starting a little bit earlier in summer and just getting your head around some of those concepts. If they're taking a new subject, so maybe they're taking economics, again, some introduction to it. I'm not saying learn the syllabus. No way am I saying that. I'm saying get used to it. So do some of that introductory reading, do some of those basic work. If your child wasn't so confident on the subject that they've taken, try and spend some time, or get them to spend some time ideally, working through some problems. So again, another one of my students, he's doing math at A-level. He's done his maths at GCSE, but we've realised towards the end he's not actually that confident on some of the differentiation stuff. We're going to spend a little bit of time over summer just looking at that and just making sure that he's kind of between GCSE and A-level. He's really taken that next step. What would have been further math had he chosen to take further math at GCSE? He hasn't taken further math at GCSE, but we've got the stuff there ready to go for summer. So get a little bit of a head start. Also, it feels a lot better. So when you're starting in September and everyone else is trying to get used to 4 subjects, you're getting used to the idea of there's free periods, freeze, what do we do with them? You already know that you're a little bit ahead. Because what tends to happen is they've gone up for GCSE, there'll be a dip. And that dip right at the start can be really, really fundamental for something like chemistry. If you do not understand the first term, you're really stuck. Really, really stuck. So try and get that head start across summer. Right. Extra skills. If your child wants to qualify as a lifeguard, or they really want to take their grade 8 violin, or they absolutely have a hankering to do an archaeological dig, but they're never going to use that at university, now is the time to do it. So now is the time to do those fun extra skills that they've always wanted to do. They've been really, really working academically hard for the GCSEs. So sure, they want to be a lifeguard. That's a great future skill to have. It's not something that's relevant to university. It's not something that you're going to put on a personal statement, but it doesn't matter. You've got the time. So now in year 11, summer, definitely worth thinking about those extra skills. So if they've had a hankering for something, have a look at maybe upskilling a little bit. And who knows, it might be the start of something that then they say, actually, I do want to do music at university, or I do actually want to do computing at university because I spent the time over this summer making my own game. That's something that may lead to it. If it doesn't, fine, absolutely fine. So extra skills. If you've got a year 11, who is in summer, that might be something that you can encourage them to do, because they'll always have it. Okay. Start looking at universities. And by that, I mean, you're not making a shortlist, but kind of doing a road trip. As we start to open up, and really this comes as kind of two advice pieces. As we start to open up, universities are starting to run open days. Mostly those are for year 12. And taking in mind that year 12 have not been able to visit universities at all. So if there's a limited number, really year 12 should take priority. And often at the moment, universities will ask where your student, what year your student is in. But if you've got some local universities and your child's just starting to think about university, it can be useful for them to visit a couple. So I remember, as I said, I come from a family where none of us had been to university, and I was the first one. And my school happened to have this program called First in the Family. And it was where those of us that had parents who'd not gone to university managed to go to two universities. And I lived in Essex. I went to CCHS, Chelmsford Grammar School. So I went to Essex and I went to Queen Mary. And I got to see two different universities. I actually got to stay at Queen Mary, which was really interesting because I hadn't really considered university as a thing until I went there. And I did that, I think, just at the start of year 12. And I stayed over. And actually, Queen Mary was one of the ones I was interested in. I wasn't too much of a fan of where it was, but I really enjoyed the labs that I got to see, the libraries. I really liked the living. I then went to Essex and I realised I did not like Essex at all. And I didn't like it because it felt really, really enclosed. Didn't help it was in my hometown, but it felt really small to me. And that helped me. That helped me to realize what type of university I was interested in, what ones I wanted to go and see when I was in year 12. So just those two universities actually helped me to get thinking a little bit about it and helped me to start to picture myself in those places, which isn't something that I'd thought to do before. So what I recommend to my year 11s is once they've done GCSEs, to have a fun day out at a university that is nearby. So obviously it depends on where you live, but walking around the university, you don't need to necessarily go in, but go into maybe, if they're open, the university cafe and sit down with your child and discuss with them and say, you know, is this somewhere that you can imagine yourself being? Let them have a couple of hours to go and see what it's like themselves, so that they've got the chance to walk around the actual campus, or they've got the chance to, if it's an open day, they'll have the chance to go into the labs or the libraries, and they can really see what it would be like to be there. And that often causes a change in motivation as well. So I have students who they're thinking that they're probably not going to apply to Oxbridge. They might apply to a couple of Russell groups, and they're not really certain where. And then they'll go somewhere and they will really love it. And they'll say, I absolutely know what I want to do. And that is usually the catalyst for them to start really working for year 12. So if your child's maybe lacking a bit of motivation, do start having a look at some of those universities. And don't forget, they've got some really great virtual tours as well. So it doesn't necessarily need to be in person. I always think it's a little bit better in person. It doesn't have to be one that you're thinking of going to, just one of them, so that they can start to see what university might be like. Summer schools. So as I mentioned right at the start, I used to work for a summer school. I used to work for a summer school that is called Oxford Royal Academy. And I still act as an agent for them. So what that means is that people who come through the education hotel get a discount. And I work for them because I like their summer schools. There are pros and there are cons, and I say this to anyone who applies. There are pros and cons to summer schools. First thing, any Oxford or Cambridge summer school that is not run by the university is not affiliated. So there is one Oxford summer school that is run by the university, and it has specific entrance criteria. Anything that has the word Oxford, Oxford Royal Academy, Oxford Summer Courses, Oxbridge Institute, they're not run by Oxford or Cambridge. Same thing for Cambridge. I know Oxford a little bit more, so I use those as the example. That means that putting them on your personal statement doesn't get you any bonus points. So I know that often people start looking at summer schools thinking, oh, well, if I've been there beforehand, that will help me with my application. And it won't, because that's not what they're designed for. However, there is many benefits of a summer school. Now, typically, there's a large amount of nationalities that come to a summer school, and that in itself is interesting. So you get to meet different people from all over the place. The second thing is, and again, I'm going to pull off of Oxford Royale because they're the ones that I've worked for years. I know what their courses are like. I helped design some of their courses. So their courses are written by people like me. So graduates, usually. PhD, masters, they tend to be the people who will write them, and we write them about what is current and what is interesting. So if you are doing a medicine summer school, then at Oxford Royale, you will be doing it in the science labs that Oxford students use, and the course will have been written by somebody who is a graduate of Oxford or Cambridge. And it will feature some kind of first year stuff, a little bit of intro, kind of A-level stuff. When I used to do some of the medicine stuff, I did biomed. I did a heart dissection with my students, and we did that in the labs that I used as a biochemistry student, and we did some of them in the medicine labs as well. So you get to use some of the same facilities. You typically have teachers who are either current students, and they'll mostly be in third or fourth year, or masters or PhD, or graduates of Oxford and Cambridge. Now, what that isn't is it's not an Oxford tutor. So there is a difference in that these are current students or past students, but they're still well qualified. They're interested in what they're doing. They can tell you a lot about the insight into that university. Sometimes they do hire from other universities. So I used to work alongside a guy who worked at UCL, and he was a medic. He'd studied at UCL, and he was doing his, I think it was part 1 or part 2 of his medical degree. And in the summer, he got time off essentially and worked for the summer school. So we did a little bit of that. The other advantage, I suppose, in summer schools is that it can spark an interest. So something like Oxford Royale does a program, and I think many of them do, where they do lots of different subjects. So if your child isn't really certain what they want to do, and they want to get a feel for different subjects, they want to get an idea about what it might be like, or some key interesting areas that they focus on, then these summer schools can be interesting. But they are there as a supplement. They're not there as a way in to Oxford or Cambridge. They're not there as, and they never advertise themselves as such either. They're not there as a course, so that you can get the certificate and you can say, I'm now more qualified. They're there to develop an interest. So, as I said, pros and cons for summer schools, and for most of the ones that I've worked with, or I worked with Oxford Royale, and I've worked for a couple of others. Mostly, there's a really big mix of nationalities. There's a really big mix of student ages, and in terms of you might be studying next to somebody who's maybe a year above or year below, which is interesting because you don't get to do that at school. You live in the college, and you work and you eat in the college, and that's something that's quite rare. You don't normally get the chance to do that. So do consider them. but they're not a necessity. Work experience volunteering. If you're year 11 and you can find yourself some work experience or some volunteering, and I discussed this, I think, on my previous video, then go for it. Now is the time. Even if it's not in the area that you're thinking of doing. So if your student, your child is interested in law, but they've managed to get hold of a bank and there's some banking work experience, do it, because they might change their mind. They might learn something interesting. They might decide they actually want to study economics. Or they might say, I absolutely hated it. And that's fine too. So do try and take up any work experience you can do, any volunteering that you can do. Because again, it adds to your experience. It adds to what you could eventually add on a personal statement, but it's also about life experience. So it's worth considering all different avenues, especially at year 11. Come out of this really academic period, doing those GCSEs, or in this case, GCSE assessments this year. Explore different avenues. And work experience and volunteering is one of the ways to do so. Okay, so before I move on to year 12, there is something that I ask my year 11s to do. And I say to them, I know it's really early, but what I want you to do at the end of summer is I want you to write me a big long list of all the things that you've done that you think are interesting. And I ask them to do it without a subject. So I don't say interesting for this subject that you're thinking of applying for, because many of them don't have an idea. But what it does is it gets them thinking. They have spent summer doing all of these different things to find their interest, or they've spent this time kind of doing lots of reading or doing projects. Projects is another one that's a great way to develop interest. Get them to write it down on a piece of paper and get them to have a look at it. And they might say, oh, lots of this is in biology and I don't want to do biology anymore. Actually, I'd much rather do English, and I don't have that much down for English. And that then gives you a bit of guidance about what you might need to do when you're coming up to year 12. Alternatively, they might just sit there and stare at the piece of paper. It does happen. At that point, you want to remind them of all the things that they have done, and also of all of the areas, all the things that they maybe have looked at summer, things they've had come into school, teachers that they may have found interesting. That's when you, if they can't get anything down, they can't write anything down, that's when you might need to look at helping them along a little bit and generally suggesting some things, because everyone's done something. We just don't necessarily think about it, and we don't necessarily work out, I suppose, what it is that maybe we're interested in. So we just need to sometimes need a bit of a helping hand. All right, so just before we go on to the year 12, I'm just going to peek around my computer to my other screen and see if anyone has asked any questions that I need to answer. Dun, dun, dun. I don't think there is. I think we're all right. Perfect. All right, we're good. So, as I said, if you are watching this on replay, give me a hashtag replay. If you are watching this live, say hello. And do write in the comments what you are looking for, what your child is looking at studying for a course. It might be that they don't know yet. And for many of our year 11s, they don't. For some of our year 12s, they don't as well. But we're going to be moving on, and we're going to be discussing year 12 and what really that year 12 summer should be about. So year 11, it's all about discovery. It's all about finding out new things, doing loads of reading, doing some work experience, doing some projects, working out, am I actually interested in this? Year 12 is a little bit more focused. Year 12, summer of, should be a focus on the personal statement. So, university visits. As you would have heard me say to parents of year 11 and year 11s, this should be your time to visit universities. So if you, due to lockdown, and there'll be loads of people who are in this boat, haven't visited a university and you're not certain which ones you need to put those applications down to, get the university visits booked in. Get them booked in as soon as possible because they're starting to open up now and you're going to want to see them to know where to apply. There are so many students. I have students who, on a really regular basis, go, oh, I really, really want to go to Bristol. And then they go visit, and then they come back and they go, it's not the place for me. I thought it was because the website looked great, or because I thought that the videos were really interesting, or because I knew somebody who went there and I thought they'd be really, I thought everyone would be kind of similar to them. You can get a feel of a university when you visit, and that feel can be quite important. So do go and visit. Now, there might be some people who are watching this video who are international, who are going, there's no way we can visit. What I would do with them is contact the admissions office of the university that you're interested in, because often they have an in-country agent. That is somebody who would have either gone to that university or represents that university in your country. And you can usually speak to them. So you can usually set up a meeting with them, whether that's online or whether that's face-to-face, and ask them all the questions you've got that you would have asked on a university tour. And it's quite useful to be able to speak to them because they'll be able to give you a little bit more insight than the website can. So if you're international and you're wondering, then please do reach out to those agents who are in your country and have a chat to them. So if you're in year 12, that should be something that's worth doing. So visit universities. Visit the ones on your shortlist, visit the ones on your long list, visit them, make a decision about them, because if you are applying to a competitive course or you're applying to medicine or dentistry or Oxbridge, you're going to be needing to put all of your universities down by October. It's not just one of them, all of them goes down. So you need to really know. And just on that university's visit, parents, I would support your student to support your child when they're looking around universities, but don't be offended if they want to go on their own, because if they want to experience what it would be like as they are there, they might not want you hanging around. So typically what I'll say to parents is, first of all, go in with them and go to the first talk, and then you'll often find that some universities will put on parent talks and some people will put on student talks, and that is just so that students can get more of a feel for the subject and you can get more of a feel for the finance and the logistical information, because ultimately they're choosing the subject and you're the one dealing with the finance and the logistics. So you need to know about that info. They need to know about whether they're interested in what's happening there. If your child is in year 12, you should be plugging your personal statement gaps. So anyone who works with me has been drafting their personal statement. They would have written their list out in year 11. Over year 12, they would have been focusing on bits of their personal statement, trying to draw it together. Over this summer is the point that everything starts coming in. So first draft, ideally before summer, really around now, so that people can start looking at it and start suggesting. I've had students who've come to me 2-3 weeks before the deadline and their personal statement's empty. It's got like one book they've read and maybe one thing they were interested in school, and the rest of it is empty. And that's a really big gap to fill. If you start by the drafting early, you can work out where the gaps are. You can start to plug them early. So again, start it early, get some preparation in, do a draft and give it to somebody and say to them, what would you add? Is it that it can't be a list? It's not a list that we're looking for. It's a story of how you found your subject interesting. So it really needs to read well, but it needs to also include things that you've done. So Have you done an essay competition? Have you done something in school? Have you entered a chemistry Olympiad? Have you, have you written an interesting poem and it's been published somewhere? But it all needs to be plugged. And the easiest way to do that is to write one out and see where the gaps are. And if you can write it out and go, I don't have enough stuff, or indeed, I've got loads, but I can't fit it all in, that's where someone picking out the best bits can help. So plugging those gaps tends to mean that you have to have written a personal statement. So I'd start working on that now. I'd start having a look through it with your student. Send it into school. Send it into school and give them an ask. Obviously, as I said, I run an advice service, so therefore that's something we do, but it should also be something that school's doing. Or if you have a friend or relative who did a similar course, get them to have a look through. There should be lots of people that you're kind of asking, but as it starts to get finessed, we ask less. So right at the start, ask anyone. What do you think? Do you think I should put more books in? Do you think I should do more stuff? Do you think it's a bit too full? Because it should read as a story, not as a list. It's a hard balance to strike. Okay. If you have selective exams, and I know Saba's listening into this, and I know that there's a couple of other people who have definitely said that their student is sitting selective exams, exam practice. I last was speaking with a Fraser, and we were talking about UCAT and BMAT. This is an old picture. It's now called UCAT, not UKCAT. And we were talking about exam practice, and really practice is one of the best ways to get through those exams. So summer, time to practice, time to make sure, and ideally, as she said, if you're applying to a university that doesn't have a restriction, try and take them early. Try and take them early and get it done as well. Get it done, and also there's a reset period. I think it's for the UCAT. So try and get it done, because you've also got A levels when you go back, which means everything starts piling on. So if you're going to be doing that exam practice, make sure it starts over summer at the latest. Some of my students have actually been doing some prep work for it already, but practice it, because it's one of the few things you can control, or you can sit for. You can't control your GCSEs anymore, year 12s, they're done. You can't control your teacher's reference. It's out of your hands. You can control your personal statement, which is why we like to start that one early, and you can control your selective exam results, because they need to be revised for. So let's make sure that they're started nice and early, and that if there is a resit, taken the first sitting, so that resit is possible. Does BMAT have a resit only, or UK? Ooh. That is a specific medicine question, but I'm going to get back to that question for you, Saba. Saba has just asked us, does BMAT have a resit or only UCAT? I will get back to you on that one. I know that I've got the information somewhere on my laptop. All right. Mentoring. Now, a couple of people have heard me mention this. Mentoring is something that I really believe in. And it's something as well that I often advise our students who are looking towards Oxbridge especially. And what it is really pairing your year 12 with somebody who is undergoing a degree at a university that they're interested in, or in the subject that they're interested in. As I mentioned before with the summer schools, one of the most interesting things to do is to ask questions of someone who is doing what you want to do. So a mentor is somebody who can give you that advice, give you that guidance. But for me, I think it's important that they're doing what you want to do. So that mentoring can be for a family friend. That mentoring could be through someone who's finished from school. So if you knew someone 2 years ago, they're doing something that you want to do. So for example, you want to study for law, they are studying for law. Ask them the questions, get them to sit down with you, get them to see what the day's like. Because often universities won't provide like a timetable. So see what their average day's like. See how much reading they have to do. Would you enjoy it? So when I pair up mentors with my students, I try and make sure subjects the same, ideally the target university is the same, and that they can give an overview. They can answer those questions that you feel a bit weird about asking. You want to know, well, how long does it take you to write an essay? How many hours of contact time do you have? What do you do regarding dinner? Do you, do you cook? Do you get takeaway? What do you do? If you really don't know those types of questions, mentors are really useful. They can help you not just with finding out about university, but they can also help with the pulling together of all the personal statement stuff. They can be a sounding board. So you can go to them and ask questions that you wouldn't necessarily, or your student necessarily wouldn't ask you. They wouldn't ask a teacher, but they need someone to really find out a little bit more about. So mentoring is something that I'd recommend. I think it's very useful. I think it can be really great to see where someone who is ideally what you want to be has gone. And you can talk to them about careers, you can talk to them about anything. And the idea is it's a informal chat, and it's something to give you more information. If your child is in year 12 and they're hitting their summer, think forwards, and think forwards to December and January. There are interviews. There are interviews not just at Oxbridge, but some of the London universities interview, Durham, Warwick, Bath. Lots of places will do interviews, or will do tours and interviews. Now, this year it was actually a little bit easier for some because it was online. If next year we're looking at face-to-face interviews, that means taking a day out of school to be able to go and do your interview. And if you've got several interviews that you've got to do, maybe you're based down in London, but the interview is all the way up in Edinburgh, that's over a day. And that means missing that on school as well. So think forwards, because you really need to be, or your student really needs to be, on top of their work. If they're going to be doing these interviews, they're not just taking a day out to do the interview, they've also got to practice for the interviews. They've also got to make sure that they are presenting themselves correctly for the interviews, that they really know what they're talking about. That is going to take time, and that takes time away from A-levels. A-levels are the things that you need to get to go into university. So there's no point applying in all these offers, and then actually your grades have slipped in the meantime because you've not been focused, and actually the whole of December was just a washout. It's got to be a balance. So again, if you're in summer, year 12, think ahead. Think ahead to the fact that in December you might be preparing for these interviews. And that means, especially if you're doing something like medicine or dentistry or vet med, that's a lot of interviews, ideally, fingers crossed. But you've got to make sure that you're keeping up with the schoolwork too. And that means being ahead. And that means being really organised. And that's something that you can prepare for in summer. Again, a little bit of reading ahead. Not masses. We're not talking do the whole syllabus. But we're talking about getting a little bit ahead. If we can get ahead and stay ahead, hit the ground running on that year 13, then it's really useful because you can stay ahead. You've got personal statements to write in October. So that's half of October. That's what you're going to be focusing on. Then if you're sitting exams, selective entrance exams in October, November, that's part of those gone. And then December, before you know it, you're at the end of the first term and you haven't really done your homework. You haven't really done the study. You can fall behind quite quickly, and it's really hard to catch up. Now, in year 12 summer, I would not say is the time to start a new skill. Now, it comes with a caveat. If you're doing it for fun, go for it, because everyone needs a bit of fun in their life. So if you just really want to take up juggling, go for it. But if you're trying to take up this new skill to boost your personal statement, and it involves a very long amount of work, there's no point, because by the time you've started it, you've worked for 3 months to be able to do it, and then you've taken the thing at the end of it. Say you want to do a first aid certificate, and actually it's going to take you a week in summer. Think about whether it's worth doing, or is it just worth doing something else, doing something else. Same thing goes for work experience, same thing goes for kind of volunteering. I would say do them, but not at the detriment of other stuff. Especially don't try and start a whole new skill just because you want to put it on your statement. There's probably other stuff that you have and other stuff that you can develop rather than trying to start something completely new. It's an individual case by case thing. If your students decided very suddenly that they wanted to change, so until this point they've said they always want to be a vet, but suddenly they've changed their mind, and right now, today, 11th of May, they want to be a lawyer, they're going to have to do some new stuff. They're going to have to do a lot of reading. They're going to have to ideally get some work experience. They're going to have to try and figure out the bits that they're interested in. That's where you've got to put the time in. But if they've always wanted to be a vet and they still want to be a vet, but there's a 3 month online course on digestive system of a rat, might not be the time to take it, because there's probably something better you could be doing with your 3 months of summer, and it's probably not that useful, and it's might be something you talk about interview, but you also might never be asked about it. So do consider the amount of time that new skill is going to take. If you're doing it because you love it, go for it, because ultimately you need to have something that you enjoy. Ideally, that would be the subject you want to take. But we all know that there are passions that we have that are outside of our careers or our study paths. So if that skill is something outside and you love it and you enjoy it, go for it. All right. Right. So hopefully this has been helpful. I know that there are, as I said, some people who'll be watching this on replay. If you're watching on replay, give me a hashtag replay, just so that I can see that you have seen it and I can come in and answer any questions that you've got. This will be uploaded. I know it'll be on the Facebook group, and we're always happy, all of us who admin the Oxbridge and University journey, we're always happy to answer your questions. So please do, if you've got questions, write them down in the group so that we can come along and we can answer. We've got a number of really great experts who are in the group as well. So always happy to help. Obviously, I've put down the two companies that I run there. So TopSchoolandUni, which deals with advice and application support specifically for universities and schools in the UK, and then the Education Hotel, which deals with our tuition and our mentoring. But I think that's about it for me. I also want to say thank you for Saba, who continues to let me come on and talk to you guys, which is really great, because as I said at the start of this talk, my path to university was, I didn't have parents who'd been to university, and I didn't have siblings. I'm an only child, so I really would have loved to have a resource like this when I was growing up, and hopefully it can be of use to other parents and to other students who are maybe asking the same kind of questions that I was at that point. Perfect. All right then. So I will log off now, and I'll leave you to your evening. Thank you. Bye bye.